not changing. What he says is going to be done 2,000 years ago gets done, 2,000 years later. What he promises to Abraham 90 years ago happens like 90 years after that, right? So again, I want us to ask this question, same as last week, about whether or not this idea of God as changing, as unchanging, has like any kind of practical application for us as Christians, right? Is it one of those things that we can just throw out because people of a different time wanted to believe this about God because things were difficult in the world, but they didn't know about science and all of this stuff, and they had to kind of like reconcile their worldviews? Or is there actually real, practical, unique benefit for us to understand God in this way, right? Like, is there a purpose behind God being unchanging, or is it just one of those things that we can throw out? Okay, so I have a couple things for us that I think are important for us to base our foundation. To me, this is the heart of why it's important for us to understand God as unchanging, because it gives us the solid foundation. But I want to kind of look at some of those, what are those building blocks of that foundation in God's unchanging nature, okay? So the first thing that we want to talk about is this idea that because God's nature is unchanging, okay, that he is the same all the time, it helps us to understand that he will fulfill his promises, right? That what he says he will do is what he will do, because he's not going to change his mind about that, right? Since God never changes, we can be guaranteed that he is reliable in the commitments that he makes to us as his creation. In Hebrews chapter 6, verses 13 through 20, the author of Hebrew talks about God interacting with Abraham. And it says, do I have that one? Did I not? Hebrews chapter 6, verses 13 through 20. Did I not? Oh, sorry. Hebrews chapter 6, verses 13 through 20. 6, 13 through 20. He talks about when God came to Abraham. We remember that Abraham was like childless, right? His wife was barren, and he was like a laughingstock, right? Hebrews chapter 6, verses 13. Yeah, we got it? Okay, no problem. I'll just read it, and then we'll get it when it's up there. It says, when God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so, after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. But because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul. So what Paul is saying here is that, he's saying like, when we swear to things, like what do kids like to do? Like, I swear to God, right? Like I swear by my mom, like I swear by my dad, right? Like, because they know that our word tend to be like less than reliable, because kids are so flighty all the time. But you base your oath upon somebody else's character, right? And he says God doesn't base his character on somebody else. He doesn't base his promise on something else. He says, I will do it. That's all he says, right? That I will do it, right? And that's what he says. I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And he says that God makes the purpose clear by taking an oath on the unchanging nature of the promise. So this passage helps us to understand that because God bases his promise on his unchangingness, Abraham could be sure of what God said. And in turn, we can be sure of what God promises to us because of his unchanging nature. People are the ones who do not keep promises because we're not in control, right? And life is unpredictable. One of my favorite shows, Mad Men. Any Mad Men watchers here? There's only 7 of us. Highly recommend. Very cool show. I love it. Probably my top show of all time. But there is a scene in there where the main character's family is in the process of just breaking up. He's divorcing. He's divorcing his wife. Don Draper is divorcing his wife. And they sat both of the kids down in kind of like the living room, right? And they're kind of explaining to them that mommy and daddy are going to be living separately, from now on, and that they're going to have to go visit dad on the weekends and, every other weekend and this and that. She was in tears, and she says to her father, "You promised that you would always come home. You promised that you'd always come home." And, you watch this and you're just like, oh, that's like heartbreaking. And, what the main character, Don Draper, says is, I am still coming home. It's just a different home, right? And these are the things that we do, right? We change the goalposts because we're not in control of what life throws at us. We're not ultimately able to keep our promises because we're not like sovereign over the world. We promised to attend our kids' music performances, but maybe traffic happened, maybe a business promotion happened, and then now your boss wants you to go on a business trip and you can't make it, right? And that performance that you promised that you would be at, you can't make it to anymore. We commit to helping someone move apartments, and then on that day, because you're stressed or anxiety, your depression or your anxiety gets the best of you, then you call and you're like, I can't make it. I'm not going to be there. Like, how is it dependent on you, right? We also think that we have the abilities to commit to things and keep our promises about, long-term projects. Maybe you commit to being a VBS leader or a VBS storytime teller or something like that. Once you get into it, you start to realize that it takes more effort and time and commitment than you were prepared to give, right? And then you back out. These are the ways that people act in this world, right? When I share these things, nobody's like, oh, they do? No, we're all very used to it, right? Because we are not in control, we are changing, right? And if God was this way too, right? That if God was somebody who changed with the times and was not in control and also kind of like, just like moved and shifted with how things were, we would have no basis for believing in the absolute trustworthiness of his promises, right? If somebody says to you, like a person says to you, I promise you that I will always do this. Yes, we appreciate the sentiment. Yes, we appreciate their commitment. But we also understand that there are things that are out of control that will lead them to not be able to keep those promises sometimes, right? Like, I want to say to my kids, Daddy will always take care of you, right? Like, I want to, like he'll say, like, Daddy will always be there for you. But I recognize in myself that I'm going to be weak sometimes. I'm going to be unable to fulfill those things sometimes. So thank God that he is unchanging, right? Thank God that he is different from us. Thank God that he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and his word is truth. Because our influence or our actions and how we respond to God is not what changes his ability to fulfill his promises. Right? So this thing that the Pharisees were putting their pride in, like their national identity, right? Like, there's nobody like us, there's us. He says, God doesn't actually need you to fulfill his promises to Abraham, right? Like, if he wanted to, he would make a child of Abraham out of the stones, right? And similarly, in